Alrighty, also welcome to the Foul Ball Podcast based here in High Point, North Carolina, furniture capital of the world. But not only is it the furniture capital of the world, but really is the home to a lot of great growth within the area, especially in terms of sports and entertainment side of things. Speaking of the entertainment, here with the owner of the dive bar with multiple locations throughout the state. So Rob, I want to thank you officially for joining us today. It's great to have you on. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, taking your time out of your hectic schedule, especially being right around the holidays as well. And so, usually like to start off with kind of a fun question, kind of throw you off your toes a little bit. And so, if you could choose your best friend in real life, who would it be in life?
Oof. So, I am very fortunate to have a group of, it's kind of my best men, kind of. And so, when I grew up, I'm I mentioned to you before we got on that I moved 13 times before I was 18. So I took the non-traditional route. I didn't have any best friends until I got to college. And then I met some of the best guys in the entire world. And so I would definitely say my group of, Casey, Dan, Mark, David, they're my closest guys who I talk to very frequently, and so those are. I don't really have a best friend. I've got best men.
Yeah, for sure. And so, with that being said, it definitely takes a group and a village to really get things going. And so, in terms of the dive bar, what was your thought process behind it? To start it, to really get it going? Take me through that journey. How it became what it is.
Yeah, for sure. So, it was interesting. Our first location was back in Mooresville, and it really was the spawn of a conversation between myself and my business partner, Kira. We were sitting down for a drink, and at the time we owned a craft cocktail bar in Mooresville, and we're having a drink, and we were just kind of reminiscing about, bars that we liked. And at the time we had this basement space in Mooresville that was unused, and so our other partner Gary was like, well, we need to come up with something to put down there. So we got to talking, and I was like, there's this bar that I went to in college, and we played Buck Hunter all night, drank beer, and then my partner Kira was like, oh, like a dive bar. It's like, yeah, kind of, and she's like, well, why don't we put a dive bar down? And I was like, yeah, I think that's great because, we're doing craft cocktails now, but a lot of bartenders and people in the industry, when they go out, even if they're making fancy drinks at work, they typically like a beer in a shop list. So I said, I think that's a great idea. And it'll be more like a community watering hole. And I was like, well, what do you want to call it? And she's like, well, let's just call it dive bar. And so I kind of laughed, and she's like, no, I'm serious. And so the name stuck. And, once we got the name and the idea, then it kind of just started to snowball. It was like, okay, well, let's write down all of our favorite characteristics for a dive bar. Let's write down things that, me being from the upper Midwest and being in a lot of dive bars, what I liked about the dive bars that I went to. And we kind of, created this amalgamation of everything we liked about the dive bars that we had gone to and try to roll them into one cohesive concept.
Yeah, safe for sure. And so even that point as well, right? So many folks who are going to all of those locations now see, this final product.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think fully realize, how much nitty gritty work goes into really building up what it is here now.
Yeah.
So kind of going from there, what were some of those, maybe roadblocks where it's like, oh, look at this, how do I overcome this? And going from there as well.
The first roadblock you have to overcome with any business is just division. When we first identified High Point as a city that we were interested in coming to, we were looking around and said, well, where do you want to be? And so you kind of got to learn about what's the plan that the town has, and you can't just drop yourself anywhere, right? And we very quickly identified, working with economic development, that this is kind of the area we want to be. Well, once we looked at that, the options were fairly limited, right? I mean, if you remember, the orthodontist office was still around, and there wasn't a whole lot of vacancy in this area, and there, to my knowledge at the time, wasn't a whole lot of new buildings being developed in a timeline that met with when we wanted to be here. So we saw this building, and it had been vacant for a while, and this building used to be, I think at some point it was a spa and it was a dentist office. And so if you can imagine this 5,000 square foot space, there was like 24 separate rooms. So when you walked in, you were immediately met with walls and hallways, and you really had to, I mean, the front alcove, that door that you walked in, there was maybe only 400 square feet up there. You couldn't see the rest of the building. It was all subdivided into rows. So you really had to have that. First obstacle was having the vision to say, okay, when I completely gut this place, it's a big box that I can cut up, right? So that was the first thing. And in general, with a lot of these openings, I mean, we've got 5 locations now. There's always little hiccups along the way that, you think of everything up front, right? But, maybe a transformer doesn't have enough power, and, okay, we got to go tap into a different one. Or, hey, the water line coming into the building isn't big enough. Or, hey, there's air conditioning units, but they're not big enough, or they're too old. And, hey, when we dig up the concrete and put this big bar in, there's all this stuff underneath here, and I don't know how we're going to tie into the water line. And so construction in itself is, I mean, it's constantly opening cans of worms, right? So that's always, there's all these little mini obstacles, right? Along the way. And I think that's kind of what makes it exciting. We're as we go through these projects, we always say, like, oh, it's not a construction project without a little excitement. And so, I think the construction piece of this and all these little kind of like mini obstacles that you run into, and sometimes they feel really big at the time. Sometimes they feel like, oh, we're never going to do this. One of the big things was our doors, our big roll-up doors at the front. Originally, they weren't going to get in time for our opening, and we ended up having to close those openings off for the first week or two until they got in. So, it wasn't a slam dunk. There was definitely some challenges along the way, for sure.
And so, in everything that we do, it's all about people, the community, and how can we help better serve everybody within the area. And so, what does it take for people to find out about the dive bar, and then what does it take for folks to get in?
Yeah. So, finding out, we've tried to, especially in our first year of business, we ended up working with the High Point Rockers, and we did a marketing package with them. We handed out flyers. We've got some big sticker graphics on the ground as you exit the stadium, kind of pointing you in our direction. We do quite a bit of social media outreach. We do quite a bit of just general kind of grassroots. Go to apartment complexes, salons, and area businesses, and then the last thing is we engage with other community leaders, right? So engaging with the Chamber of Commerce, engagement with people at Stock and Grain, visit High Point, discover High Point. It's really important to kind of develop some of those relationships, especially within the business community, because look, at the end of the day, those people in those businesses interact with a lot of people. When you're a business owner, you end up interacting with a lot of people, and so ingratiating yourselves to those people, I think, is really important. In terms of getting in, we're until 8:00, we're come one, come all. So kids, parents, whatever. At 8:00, we do become 21 and up. But we're a bar for everybody. That's kind of the whole point of, going back to what we were talking about originally. The concept of this was, it's a place that's meant to be really easygoing, really approachable, all of our, a lot of our price points are fairly affordable. And look, I mean, if you come out with one other person, you two could probably have food, play games, and a couple of drinks for 30-40 bucks. So I mean, it's a great value proposition as well, and we really wanted to be approachable. So going back to your question, it's like we wanted to kind of take as little as possible to walk in the door.
Right. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
We're sad. I love what you said too. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's definitely the way it should be, no matter what. And so start wrapping things up. If you could choose your favorite moment from this whole entire journey and experience, what would that look like?
Wow, that's a great question. It's interesting, and I just recently had a baby, and it's made me think about this, where you go through these moments in life where you're doing something, right? And you're so focused on what you're doing and what's right in front of you that sometimes you don't have a second to kind of come up for air. And after we got through our first few, we did Mooresville and Hickory, and then we did Cornelius, and then right on the heels of Cornelius, we opened up this location. So there was just a lot of expansion happening and a lot of focus. And I think one of the coolest things was like, when we had our opening here, just seeing how many community members came out, and it was one of those like really just kind of cool feelings, because the grand opening we did here was, we had, the mayor came out, and people from city council and other business owners and the chamber, and we had a lot of just folks from the community. And I think, and I was standing outside talking to somebody from there was a television news station who came to interview me, which was cool. But the best part was kind of just when I turned around after the interview and, seeing the place full, and seeing how many people came out to support us. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? Is you set this goal for yourself of creating this community bar, and ideas are great, and, you think you execute it well, but kind of seeing that all come to fruition at that moment, and kind of standing outside and not really being a part of it, but just getting to kind of witness it, that was my favorite part.
For sure. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, to wrap it all up, what's next?
Yeah, that's always everybody's favorite question. So after High Point, we opened up Winston in April of this year, and we being like me and my partners, Gary and Kira, were like, we're taking a break. At the time, my wife was pregnant. We had our baby early November, and so I was like, I need some runway, right? into my next project. So we do have a 6th location coming in 2025.
Awesome.
We're targeting kind of a May or June opening.
Awesome.
We'll be announcing that location January, February timeframe of 2025, where that's at. But yeah, I mean, look, in general too, in terms of what next, there's going to be more of these. So, I think we'll do the one in 2025. We'll probably, once we get that one up, and start looking for another location. So general plan's growth. And we're laying a lot of the foundation right now organizationally for how we structure that growth. There's a lot of the conversation we have right now internally, but I think it's a really good opportunity between now and this next one. We're redeveloping our training programs and looking at kind of who our future leaders are in our organization, and then trying to identify slowly calculated, where these X locations are going to be. But there will be more dive bars.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's always fun to work too, right? So,
Yeah. That's right.
As long as it keeps going onward and upward, that's
right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
But I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank
on
you.
my end, so we greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely.